Hi, I'm Rose, and this is the Sovereign Soul. I support people to regain autonomy over your soul. That is the main purpose of what I do. I am an energy healer and a nervous system and soul guide. Today, I want to talk about the nervous system, and I want to talk about particularly how we can rewire it. Um, First, I want to explain how the nervous system actually sets the tone for our entire existence and reality. Quite often, you hear in manifestation world where they tell you that you should change your vibration, and this will then give you the reality you want, like keep your vibe high. But if the nervous system is set in a way to keep you safe more than getting what you want, and it feels safer to be where you are, there's nothing you can do to bridge that gap. The only way to actually change the vibration is to change the nervous system, and you can't override that through affirmations or journaling or somatic work, actually. The way that you change the nervous system is first and foremost through safety. That's the first rule. And then presence. Those, I think, would be the two main keys for getting the nervous system to change. So, what the nervous system essentially is your safety net. It is a defense mechanism to keep you safe and to keep you alive. You got two different kinds in the nervous system. The one part that just keeps you alive through breathing, pumping blood through your body, just the responses, the physical needs of the body that we don't even have to think of. It's just happening. And then there's another part of the nervous system that wants to keep you safe from threat and danger. As children, we develop a nervous system that replicates the environment that we are raised in. And this happens because we are trying to survive. So if our parents or our guardians or our caretakers don't have the tools to help someone grow emotionally intelligent, feeling cared for, feeling safe all the time, emotionally, you are going to just mimic the world that you're in. And so your parents would have mimicked the world that they were in, who would have mimicked the world of whoever raised the great grandparents and the grandparents, and so it goes. So basically, our nervous system has been created by circumstances. The it's not the core human, it's not the core you. And that nervous system is what sets the tone for your reality. Every time the nervous system set a new defense in place as a child, as when you were a child, it disconnected you to a part of your soul. So it just strengthened your inauthenticity, so to speak. So if we could see the soul as authenticity, you would see the nervous system as inauthenticity. And basically, every time you had to shut off a piece of yourself, your authentic self, your authentic expression, anytime that you weren't allowed to fully and completely express your feelings, your emotions, you shut off a part of this, of your soul. Now, when we come into the body, we already have the agreement of this lifetime. We've already had it that we are not fully connected to our souls when we come in here. And I have a whole theory on that. But basically, to have a reconnection to the soul, we have to have a reconnection to our emotions. The soul does not differentiate between emotions. It doesn't have negative ones and it doesn't have positive ones. It just has emotions, feelings. Now, the nervous system is a very real thing, actually. So the threat that's pertained, it comes from a part of the brain that's always scanning the environment. And so emotional threat is a very real thing, just like mental and emotional abuse are very real things. So the threat that we feel is very, very, very real. Whether a person is feeling rejected or abandoned, you have a physical reaction within your body. So it's the same as if you were being chased by a lion or a tiger. You are going to have chemical responses. And it's no different when we have emotional responses. The body is a chemical factory. So when something goes on in that part of the brain that tells you, hey, we've got a problem here, you will be flooded with chemicals, and those chemicals will give you different sensations and feelings. And that's essentially what emotions are. Those feelings will either make you feel good, or those feelings make you feel scared, or they make you feel, I don't know, nervous, apprehensive, confused, whatever. But there is a whole array of chemical reaction that happens along with the intangible part of an emotion. So it feels like a very real threat within the body. The soul, on the other hand, sees it as an experience. So the soul is innocent, like a child. At its core, that is what it is. And essentially, when we're told that we were made in the image of God, it doesn't mean our physical body or our mind. What it actually means is that our soul is the image of God. The soul is just pure love. So imagine that. This is just obviously theory, philosophy. It's not necessarily true, and it's for you to feel into for yourself of what feels right. But this is the way I feel it, this is the way I see it, and this is what makes sense to me. The consciousness, divine consciousness, is sitting in the soul as well. So if at your core you are just love, that is the mirror of God in all of us, the soul. As children, we are closed from that, yet we come in with this innocence to just be, to just experience. It's why children can have a little spat with one another and just forget about it in seconds, because they don't carry it with. They have their feelings, they have their emotions, and so they move on. But when they are put in a situation where they have to adapt, or otherwise they're not going to fit in, they're going to be rejected, they're going to be screamed at, they're going to be reprimanded, all of these things, they're going to adapt to that world so that they don't have to deal with the pain that comes of not being able to just fully express yourself. So the soul expresses itself through emotions. It's this chemical reaction. It must come, it must go, it must pass. It's just an experience. What happens in our brain is we start perceiving those emotional responses as threats, that they are unsafe. It's unsafe to feel those things. It's unsafe to be those things. And so it's not only around emotion, but it's around experiences and traumas and things that have happened where we were shamed and humiliated, rejected, abandoned, betrayed, all these core wounds that we were experiencing. And we interpreted them as very unsafe. You just don't go there. Those are no. Again, because we're mimicking. If you watch movies and TV and read books and you see how people interact with one another, it's being perceived as normal. I mean, religion even makes us think that God's this angry, wrathful, awful thing in the sky that judges us constantly. So everything just reinforces the unsafety of just experiencing ourselves and all emotions. And like I say, and every time that happens, we're trying to fit in, because human beings are communal creatures. They want to fit in. And when you're little, you are at the mercy of whoever is raising you. That is just the way it is. You are quite fragile and quite incapable in the needs of this world, being able to provide them for yourself. So all of this gets locked into the nervous system. And that becomes our way of functioning, so much so that we become so identified with that. We think it's normal because it's been reinforced, like I say, not only through that home, but then extended family, schools, extended experiences. And so those emotions get locked in. Now, inner child work and shadow work, I've always seen as exactly the same thing. And it is also nervous system work. Any part of healing that we need to do is all based on nervous system. And even physical ailments are energy which are stuck in the body. It's not necessarily always like, say, a bacteria that got into your skin. Sometimes, and quite often, there are emotional causes for our own disconnect to our body and the physical ailments and things that we experience, because everything is connected. We are these holistic beings. So the vibration of our body gets set, and that vibration has already started in the womb when we were carried by our mom, and mom's stresses and anxieties and beliefs. And of course, you've got the 1% of our genetics, or our genes, our DNA, which is activated, and that comes from all the generational lines that we came from, mother and father. And all of that starts setting a tone in this vibration inside this human body. And that is what sets the key for whether or not you can actually manifest the things you want, as opposed to keep getting the things that you get. Your worth is very much dictated by the vibration and the defenses that you have within your nervous system. As a child, if you were taught that the reason why you guys have no money is because that's just the way it is. This is your lot in life. It's how you were born, and it's what you're supposed to experience. So there are entire religions that are built around caste systems, which tell people that your karma is the reason why you were born into poverty, for example. So it just becomes deeper and deeper ingrained, your belief systems. The belief systems and the patterns and the identity are all integrated into that vibration, and it becomes such a normal way of functioning that we become so disconnected from what is safe that we eventually have lost the path back to the soul. And like I say, the soul is the divine mirror of God. And what I find really fascinating is that the DNA, I have been shown, is the blueprint of the soul, and 99% of the DNA is dormant. So 99% of our soul potential, the mirror of God that we could live and experience, is sleeping. It's dormant. It's not doing anything. Yet that's where the entire blueprint of the soul sits. The way to get back there, because all the vibration of everything that we are in this body is sitting around that. The DNA sits in the nucleus of the cells, but that's only a tiny part of a cell. Everything else is the vibration that's coming out of there. So we've got part of the vibration which is switched off from the divinity, and then we've got part of the vibration that is saying, I am unworthy, and dealing with a lot of pain, and thinking that the way in which they're dealing with things is so normal because that's what they've been taught. And again, we just want to fit in. So this is what everybody's doing. So therefore, I have to be doing it. And even if it doesn't feel good or doesn't feel right, the person still does it. So how do you change this? How do you change the nervous system? How do you change that vibration? You change it through safety, and you change it through presence. Most people find this concept completely, it's so simple that it goes totally over people's head, particularly if you've been someone who is on a personal and spiritual growth journey, and you have been for decades, like myself. I'm nearly going into 30 years, 3 decades of this work, this active, conscious work. And I remember once reading a book. I didn't read the book once. I've read that book about 15 times, called The Mastery of Love. And the first time I read it, I was a 28-year-old little ego-driven girl, clearly deep into the defenses of the nervous system. And I read that book and I put it down. I don't know what all the rage is about. That is just so simple. Everybody knows that. And something in me went, how's about putting down the ego, read the book again with an open mind and an open heart? And I read the book again, and it blew my mind. I was like, that's one of the deepest books I've ever read in my life. So quite often when it comes to the reconnection, it's the way that seems too simple And sometimes it's so simple that we can't fully grasp it, or the nervous system is so bound in its own beliefs and patterns that doing that thing is, it's like, it's not even scary, it's just like no-go zone. And so I spoke a little bit earlier about shadow work and inner child work being the same thing, and also being the core of nervous system work. Emotions are the bridge. Emotions are the bridge between changing the nervous system and getting back to the soul. And I want to believe that it's in getting more of the DNA to spark, even if it's 0.1% of the DNA to spark with that God consciousness that is what we really are at our core. And the emotions are the way through that. But that is what the shadow work and the inner child is. They call it shadow work because it's the parts of ourselves that we have hidden in the shadows. It's the parts of ourselves that we couldn't logically explain as children, so we just had to emotionally adapt, because children come in with a lot of feeling. They're far more in their energy body and their emotional body and their spiritual body, and I'm not so sure about the physical, but maybe that too. But I would say the dominating is the emotional, energetic, and spiritual body of a child. So everything that it's adapted to you've not really been able to think the processes through or understand them physically, what's going on. A child can't say, hey, I think my mom's hurting and that's why she's screaming at me, but I don't think it's really because I broke the plate. Like, the anger can't be because the plate is broken. There's more going on in there. But we don't have that as a child. We just believe that we're the reason why somebody that we love and should be loving us is so angry, because they're not owning their emotion. They are projecting their emotion onto us. And so we become afraid, we start lying, we want to avoid any form of conflict like that. Again, because it hurts, it's scary, and especially when you're so little and they're so big and they the world. When we're taught we've got to look up to them because they know everything, and they really are our entire world and universe when we are so little. So in a moment of trauma as a child, we put things away in the shadows, parts of ourselves that we don't want to look at. When we get older and the ego really starts kicking in, and then we start telling ourselves stories about that. The mental body starts really kicking in, and we start telling ourselves stories about those things that we're hiding in the shadows. That I'm a bad person. I'm the reason why my mom is always upset. I'm the reason why everybody is always upset. I'm not good enough. I'm not worth love because I'm such a shithead. Whatever those stories are that we then start just making those already quite sore defense mechanisms even more sore. And when you don't have the resources and the tools around you, you just dive in there, man, and you just do what the rest of the world is doing. You are drowning and trying to just keep your head above water when it comes to our emotional and mental states and how we fit into the world, especially if you come from a background where there isn't that support, and there's definitely not a good example of all of that. So you put those parts of yourself in what you think is a shadow, and it's so bad to you, like you almost believe that it's the most evilest, disgusting part of yourself, but actually it's not. What it is a bunch of emotions that a little child, which still belongs to you, you're still holding that vibration of the little kid that's at its arrested development, is actually sitting in all of those shadows and in all of those little dark places in you. So the darkness isn't dark at all, not from the perspective of bad or evil or negative. What it is emotions and parts of yourself that you have decided and believed and told yourself a story about make you a terribly bad person. And therefore, it makes people absolutely petrified to go into the work of the emotions that that little child is holding on to still, that child within. So if you have to do shadow work, what you're going to notice is that the shadow is only a wounded child. A child that didn't get the opportunity to fully express itself, a child that wasn't seen, a child that didn't feel like it was enough, a child that was rejected, a child that was abandoned. Those are actually the things that sit in those shadows of the shadow self. And I think it's a very important part of our own reclamation of our own soul autonomy is to reestablish a relationship with the child within, because everything is about relationships. Everything is about how we relate to something. So the reason why we would be scared of the shadow self is because of how we relate to it, what our story is to tell us about those parts of ourselves that we just shouldn't be looking at, we shouldn't be admitting are there, the parts that we're ashamed of, the parts that we are scared of, because it's a story we've told ourselves. It doesn't mean that that's necessarily the truth. It's just what's kept it locked there. So remember I said to you that the emotions are the bridge between healing the nervous system and moving towards a, let's say, a sparklier soul, to reclaim the parts of our soul that have been shut down. We have to change the patterns that we have been going through. So when you visit these places in the nervous system that are so locked in for safety, like so much so, like I say, that people don't even want to go there, you have to be willing to process the emotion. And one of the main things that we're taught about negative emotions is run the fuck away. Negative emotions are bad. So if you are feeling anything negative, the last thing on earth you want to do is admit that you are feeling these negative emotions. It seems that anger is an acceptable one because it kind of shows you strength or dominance or makes you look like you, I don't know, have more power over somebody else. But when it comes to sorrow and sadness and grief and the real story behind that of insecurity and whatever emotions might come up with the feelings of rejection and abandonment and betrayal and injustice, you have guarded yourself so much from feeling it that it is more scary to go there, to admit it, because all of a sudden then you are admitting to yourself that perhaps you think you're broken, or perhaps you think that you are this bad person that you were told as a kid, or what you believed you were as a kid, or making all the wrong things right. And so the emotions that are stuck there, every time you have an emotional response to something, every time you are triggered, there is always going to be two ways that you can respond. The one is automatically from a automated pattern and response and defense mechanism of the nervous system. That is one way. So somebody pokes, you react, and you will even feel justified in your reaction. You might blame that person. It's basically going to be complete and entire projection, because that is quite beautiful in that there's only you, actually. So if you're blaming someone else, there's something that you need to look at inside yourself always. And the other way is with awareness and curiosity, to go, oh, that's interesting. I can see that this situation triggered a certain feeling in me. I'm going to take ownership of what I am feeling, and I am willing to go and be with this feeling. So a trigger is a gift, actually, but the simplicity of being able to sit with what you're feeling without needing to blame or judge or fear it takes practice, because every emotion that you feel is a signal from your soul. Always. That is just the way it is. The soul communicates with you. Your soul communicates with you through emotions. And so if you are not living the life that you want to live, and inside you've got an internal war going on, and there are a lot of emotions going on, but you keep dealing with it from the perspective of, I need to overcome this emotion, I need to run away from this emotion, I need to numb this emotion, I need to run this emotion out of me, I need to fix it, I have to find a solution for it, basically, as opposed to just giving it grace and space, acknowledgement. It takes a lot of practice to do that. But obtaining that relationship with your emotions is what gives you the power in your own life to change the wiring of your nervous system. And it gives you back free choice. It gives you the ability to choose how you respond to something, as opposed to just feeling like somebody else has the remote control on your life and how you respond to areas of your life, not only when you're triggered, but repeating patterns where you're stuck, where you're not changing circumstances because you're still vibrating on the same defense mechanism, basically. So the work is about meeting yourself in the middle, the emotional part that needs you to see it and to acknowledge it and observe it and be aware of it. And that is done through safety. So whenever I do a session with somebody, I will always ask them, what makes you feel safe with somebody? When you are with a person who you can just be completely open with, and essentially it feels like the experience just feeds you exponentially. What is it about that experience that makes you feel safe? What creates that safety? And every single person says the same thing when they sit with it. They go, well, I don't feel judged, I feel seen, I feel accepted. These are the words that get used. They don't feel judged, they feel seen, and they feel accepted. So it means that they can say anything, they can do anything, they can be anything, and somebody on the other side is holding a space with deep compassion, grace, and understanding. There is love there. There isn't condemnation. There isn't disapproval. There is no threat in that environment. And that safety is the key to reclaiming yourself, because that is what you need to give yourself. Everything in the world is about relationships, and most importantly, it's going to be about your relationship to yourself. When you start having a better relationship with yourself, you start having a better relationship with everything and everyone around you. The way to get to the little child in the corner, those shadows, is to first and foremost create safety inside yourself to go there. Safety is a choice and safety is a decision. So when it comes to somatic work of the nervous system, when it comes to breathing exercises, or journaling, or whatever those things are, you've got to ask yourself, are those plasters so they can, that rush of emotions, of fears, of a lack of feeling safety, anxiety, is it just trying to bypass it? Or is it calming you down enough to feel safe to go and visit it? Because that, again, is another really, it's important to understand that emotions need to be visited. They need to have expression. Just finding techniques that take you back to your center, but you haven't actually fully processed the emotion, it's just going to keep that emotion stuck in you. And that in turn is going to keep the vibration of the nervous system the same. It's not going to give the soul opportunity to release that thing. All it's doing is putting a plaster on it. So it's not that I don't believe in somatic work, because I absolutely do. If it calms a person down, I think that's wonderful. If it grounds you, if it centers you, that's amazing. But that calming, that grounding, that centering has to be for safety, so that you can then go to the emotion that the soul is trying to show you. There will be stories attached to it. There will be all sorts of things attached to it. But essentially, that is how we start rewiring the nervous system, how we start changing the relationship that we have to our emotions, and how we start changing the relationship that we have to the nervous system. The nervous system goes from being something that was just on autopilot to something that becomes conscious. Consciousness and awareness is what you need to be able to take back free will to choose a different way forward for yourself. The soul will only be about free will and creativity and love. It's not going to be about anything that's going to make us feel trapped and actually like a victim, not only to ourselves but to the world around us. It's not going to have things that are happening on autopilot that we can't control. It's a very different thing. There's not other external influences when we have an autonomous soul. And so this is getting very long, but that's what I want to just say. The technique is simple but very, very hard. You have to be prepared to meet yourself and all those parts of yourself in order to allow those things to no longer have influence over your reality and your vibration. You have to change your relationship to those things, the relationship to your past, your relationship to traumas, your relationship to negative emotions, your relationship to the allowing of things, to the surrendering of things, the relationship to belief systems that actually aren't serving you. All of these relationships have to be willing to shift and change. But first and foremost, you have to be willing to see them in the first place, because that is your gold. Nobody lives inside your body but you. Nobody can give you one technique that is going to totally and entirely fix your life. The technique means nothing if the person using it doesn't use it to the best of their ability. So I'm saying to you, well, if you're feeling anxious, instead of pushing it away, how about you just acknowledge it? So that's it in simplified terms. But I know there's a lot more to it than that. We go through a lot in our lives, and I know the different levels of peeling away of things, and that seems to be never ending. But it's always a deeper level that we can go to within ourselves, which is fascinating and interesting and wonderful, because if the depth can eventually get to our soul, and that we can reawaken an entire 99% of God consciousness within us through the rewiring of the nervous system and moving us to a totally different place of safety. And how we do that is through our emotions. That to me is pretty fucking amazing. But you have to be willing to meet yourself really deeply to be able to do that. And you have to be willing to be that person for yourself. Be the one who's going to have your back. Be the one who's going to hold space for you. Be the one who's going to see you and accept you and have compassion for you. And stop treating the child in you like an adult that should know better. That's what got you there in the first place. You had adults who are essentially children in adult bodies who were trying to raise you to the best of their ability, and so stunted your own growth and ability. Okay, that is a long video, but I really think that it's important. I think this is key work in anybody who really wants to reclaim consciousness for this planet. And you start with yourself. So, yeah, wishing you all the love and luck in the world, eh?